Well, it's the day of my annual flight exam because I have IFR rating in Europe. You need uh, every year a professional proficiency check. That's what it's called, and it's today. So I'll let you know later how it went. I'm a bit nervous, I have to admit, because well, it's not perfect, and I know the examiner he's quite a harsh examiner, but that's good. I mean, he's testing me, but that gives me a bit of butterflies in the stomach. As you can see, it's windy, so I have to probably navigate some slight turbulence because of course, privacy of the instructor, as well as me not embarrassing you in front of you, embarrassing me in front of you. I'll not record anything during the exam itself, but for sure I'll let you know how it went. So keep the blue side up.
Right, so the next step was to fly to Lelystad, which is about a 20-minute flight from Rotterdam, where the examiner was waiting for me with this form. You see this form from Auto Control, which is one of the registered aviation authorities in Europe. Since I have an Austrian license, despite the fact I'm not Austrian, this is applicable to me. So basically I'm going through this exercise every year. There's two things I had to do this year. One was the revalidation for single engine piston, and the other was the proficiency check for instrument rating, and this is combined with Auto Control in this particular form here, and I'm already on page 12 because that's the interesting bit that shows the required performance. So in general, you have to be within 100 feet and have to basically track within 5 degrees. So that's the overall rule, very similar to the US FAA. And then go around altitude for IFR, just above 50 is okay, but nothing below. Same for the minimum descent and the missed approach procedure altitude. Same requirements both on the LNAV and the LVP, which is also the same in terms of precision as the LNAV VNAV for this purpose. And then, of course, for flying a 3D approach with RNP, so LVP, basically there's instructions that there must no deviation 75 feet below the vertical profile and not more than 75. And so basically these are the requirements that had to be achieved in the frame of this examination. And let me pick a couple of points. It's a very nice form, by the way. I find it very useful because it gives you all the tasks that will be performed, so you can actually prepare mentally for what's going on. Things like performance calculation, making the flight plan, inspect the cockpit, use the checklist. Those are the flight preparation items. Then flight maneuvers, so we're talking about no autopilot, then just normal maneuvering, then changing throttle at different speeds, so different flight regime items, steep turns without spoilers, with and without spoilers, so there's the typical VFR maneuvering exercise. Let's see if I find something interesting here in terms of the procedural instrument flying. For example, standard instrument departure, arrival, and visual approach. In our case, we did also a circling approach, which is something you not do very often in Europe. So that was a very useful exercise for me to do. Then emergency procedures, so normal and abnormal, of course, in a real examination environment. Normally you get more of the emergency stuff going, so engine failure, that's what we did. Nothing on the pressurization because we have none, no failure of pitot-static system, so we didn't try that. It was mainly the engine failure was checked, and this was logical in a small single-engine aircraft, but be a good abnormal thing. So here's the real abnormal emergency procedures. So this is just failed equipment and things like fire, and we talked about that. Fuel dumping, which is not applicable to the Mooney, and wind shear at takeoff landing, which was actually what happened all the time because of the weather conditions. We actually I had the simulated engine off landing, that's the landing, where we had a wind shear just, I don't know, 30 feet over the ground. So that's basically this list. There's more, of course, so we also talk about now this is also applicable to multi-engine, so you see also things like only one engine simulated procedures, then circling approach, like I said before, we've done that, and missed approach procedures for the IFR part, and then landings. So we didn't do everything, and it's not required to do everything here, because also the instructor can see the operations while we're going there. So there's many things in here in this list that are being checked off by the examiner while we're actually flying. So how I handle my checklist, for example. So that's quite straightforward. But it's not much bigger than that. So you can see it's just 4 or 5 pages of things that may occur in the revalidation, and then at the end I get grades. Of course, I show you the empty form, and I will get back to you later with the result, not necessarily the printed one, but because that's still, I mean, there's a signature on it later, so I'm not able to share that with you. But it is, of course, very exciting to see all the things that we have to do every year to demonstrate, even as private pilots, that we're proficient, which is, I think, good in one sense. Of course, we want to be proficient. On the other hand, it is, on a day like today, it's also very demanding and sometimes a bit overwhelming. Let me talk over some of the track here that is actually recorded by my 4Flight, not being sponsored by 4Flight. So we leave Lelystad, like I said, on a instrument routing under VFR conditions. It's called the Honey 1 Mike departure, and I spell it here for the non-Dutch speakers. And we basically started northeastbound towards Groningen, which is the IFR airfield where we did the thing. And you see kink here in the trajectory, which is all the maneuvering that the examiner did with me: slow flight, stall, approach to stall, landing configuration, takeoff configuration, all these things, which were quite demanding. But then we entered the control zone of Groningen and went for a circling approach for runway 05 there, the RNP approach, and Mooney is equipped with that. But before we went into a hold, and he taught me about doing a hold under very difficult wind conditions using GPS and no timing, simply only relative position. That worked very well. Went for one approach, RNP 05, circling 23, if I'm correct. Let's see what's happening here on the recording. So yeah, sidestep, and then we circle back to 23, missed approach, go back up, and now we do an RNP approach into runway 23, which was indeed the active runway on that day, with the wind a bit longer, final approach course, and then we go down to another missed approach. And then it was a very regular instrument approach, of course in challenging wind conditions with a lot of turbulence. So we went back, and then for a touch and go. The first one was also a touch and go, so it was 2 landings in in Groningen, and then we went back to Lelystad. Now, as you can see down there, the speed has been increased by a factor of 20, so it's an extreme time lapse. The whole thing took about close to 2 hours, and it was quite demanding. Flying back into Lelystad, and the procedure there is a bit funny because it's a control zone, there's a control tower there. You have to make sure that you're not in conflict with the airspace in Amsterdam. So just normal flight back, and then we have to go to that entry point, which is Mike, and then go to X-ray and land on runway 23. They're back in Lelystad. And that was actually the time when he pulled the power and said, "That's the landing." And we had wind shear on final approach. And that was basically the story of this. And I can share with you at this point that I was successful and have achieved another year of flying in the Mooney, including being rated for instrument flying. So that's very good news. If you see me a bit green in the face, it's because I am actually shaken after this jet ride. I made it, but it was 2 hours with moderate turbulence, and it was tough. But I made it, so I'm good for another year flying the Mooney. Let's not do that again. It was really tough. We have gusts of 38 knots today. And the Mooney is good in turbulence, but it's still a drag. So thanks for watching. That is all for me today. I go and throw up.